Memorial tattoos have become a popular way of remembering loved ones. Our guest today is Deborah Davidson, creator of the Tattoo Project. You're connected with the Heart of Hospice. I'm Helen Bauer here with Jerry Finter.
Whether you're a family caregiver or an end-of-life professional, we're here to enhance your hospice experience by connecting you with information you can use about end-of-life care. Don't miss the California Hospice and Palliative Care Association annual conference coming up June the 6th through the 10th in Orange, California. The conference theme is Back to the Basics at the Bedside and features a 2-day pre-conference on LNEC communication. Up to 16 continuing education units are available for attendees. Early registration ends April 1st, so visit calhospice.org to register and tell them you heard about it on the Heart of Hospice podcast.
I think this may be my new obsession. Not the guest. I don't want to scare anybody, but our guest today is such an interesting person, and she is doing some amazing work. Deborah Davidson is with us today.
So Deborah is an associate professor at York University in Toronto, and she's a public sociologist with a passion for research that focuses on the meanings tattoos have for people. Now, this is what I find interesting, is that there seems to be more and more acceptance of tattoos. Now, let's think about this. In my day and time,
oh Lord,
does this sound like an old person yet? Yes, it does.
Yes, it does.
I'm going to claim that. Tattoos were for people who were in biker gangs, prison, typically somebody who was
in the military.
In the military, perhaps. Yeah, you think of people who are in the Navy or the Marines, they always came home with tattoos, right?
Right.
Yeah, typically not mainstream. That's changing.
Yes, and Deborah said exactly the same thing. She said it's no longer viewed as deviant body art.
Right, exactly. Now, in the interview, she's going to tell us how old she was when she got her first tattoo.
I did ask her that.
You did.
I was being very nosy, but she was very upfront, shared a lot of personal stuff. She's got a great story, so she doesn't need us to tell it for her. Here's our discussion with Deborah Davidson of the Tattoo Project.
Deborah, we're so glad to have you on the Heart of Hospice podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, we're going to jump right in because Jerry will tell you I'm a little obsessed with this topic of memorial tattoos, remembrance tattoos. I think it's so cool. And you have done some amazing, very, very unique work with it. How did you become aware of and interested in memorial tattoos of all things?
Well, as a sociologist, my research had been and continues to be dying, death, bereavement, grief. And both as scholarly pursuits and as personal experiences. So in 2009, I began volunteering for a bereaved families organization. And I met people whom I didn't think would or should have tattoos, showing my bias about tattoos at the time, thinking they had been primarily related to deviance. But I realized that many people who had tattoos in memory of their loved ones who are deceased. At one point or other, in all of my presentations and conversations and publications, I like to note that tattoos have never been solely related to deviance. And that's also a note to myself. Rather, historically, they've also been used in sacred ceremonies, in marking rites of passage. So in short, tattoos often have profound meanings for those who bear them.
It's amazing. I think that I have often encountered people who are what I would consider younger than I am or not, quote unquote, mainstream, that have tattoos, and I've never really paid attention, but I have a son-in-law who has 2 sleeves, and he served in the Marines in Afghanistan, and every one of his tattoos is a memorial tattoo in one way or another. for his fallen
Yes,
brothers.
I have met both servicemen who have memorial tattoos. They also very spiritual for them. And I've met and interviewed a woman whose husband served who also has a similar tattoo. And memorial tattoos have immense meaning. I categorize a memorial tattoo as one type of a broader category, which I call commemorative tattoos. The commemorative tattoos represent more than, the deceased and our experiences with grief and bereavement. The commemorative tattoos represent our other experiences, events, dreams to be fulfilled, hopes to be achieved. And it's not uncommon to have memorial tattoos that are combined with other types of commemorative tattoos. So a memorial tattoo, though, is one specific type of commemorative tattoo that is in memory or honor or both of a deceased person or animal. Now, I have met and interviewed several people with tattoos remembering their animals, all types of animals from domestic to horses and pigs. And if you have noted the photo on my book, the symbol for the Tattoo Project is an elephant. And that's for a particular reason. And it's also one of my tattoos. I have a tattoo of the elephant that's on my book cover tattooed on my upper arm. And elephants are intelligent, sentient creatures who deeply care for and about members of their own herd, as well as those outside their herd. This includes how elephants grieve and aid in loss and bereavement of others. And we know that those of us who have lost loved ones know that others, in their best interest, but not in their best knowledge, try to rush us through our grief.
Right.
It's uncomfortable to them, though it's important to us. Well, elephants don't do that. The herd keeps up with the elephant that's grieving, and they don't rush them through their grief, which is what bereaved people need from others. And so with this project, I hope to make the elephant in the room that is grief and bereavement visible to others and helpful. And we know also that elephants remembers, which is what tattoos help us do. We may not forget our deceased, but we want others to acknowledge and honor their existence rather than just their death.
I love the strength in the meaning behind that. That's so amazing. It's very powerful. So you have some memorial tattoos. You've already told us about one, your elephant tattoo. Tell us about the other tattoos and the stories that they tell that they're related to.
Well, I got my first two tattoos in 2009, shortly after meeting the people at bereaved families. And they represent, they're butterflies, two butterflies, representing the short but meaningful lives of my two babies that died in 1975 and 1977. And at that time, these babies were not really recognized, nor was our grief, nor was our joy at their life or our grief at their death. And we were told to go home and forget about it. But that's not the case. And my research emerged from that. And so I had those butterflies. Butterflies are often used as symbols of, short, beautiful lives. And now when women experience perinatal loss in hospitals, the hospitals often put a butterfly or a falling leaf on the door of that hospital room so that anybody from physician to cleaner to visitor that goes in that room knows that that family is grieving the loss of a child, and that is meaningful and important. When I had those two tattoos done at once, I told the tattoo artist, leave a space for my living son because, so I had a perennial flower because he's always coming back. He's a perennial. And from that, given that my babies were never considered really part of my family in the larger sense, I have included several images representing other family members, both deceased and living. So that whole set of images is a pictorial representation of my family embodied in my living flesh, such that they will be with me until my death. And the last tattoo I had added to that, they're kind of in an oval pattern, and over the top of the oval, I had inscribed my parents' daughter, because when they died 6 months of each other in 2013 and 2014, I realized how much of me is from them. So they are, and I have included myself in that pictorial representation. Excuse me, Deborah comes from the Hebrew meaning a bee. So I'm a bee looking out after my family. Now, some of you know who are listening to this, tattoos are like potato chips, and it's hard to have just one. Continuing my thinking about dying and death and grief, my last tattoo honors life and death as a continuum. It's a representation of the poem, "Do Not Stand at My Grave and Weep," because it goes on to say, I am not there, I do not sleep. Rather, it says, I am in various forms of nature. I am the thousand winds that blow. I am the diamond glints on snow. I am the sun on ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn rain. When you awaken in the morning's hush, I am the swift uplifting rush of quiet birds circled in light. I am the soft stars that shine in the night. Do not stand at my grave and cry. I am not there. I did not die. I have these images tattooed on from going from my wrist to my elbow. To me, this reminds me of the continuity of life and death, and it's keeping with the laws of conservation of mass and energy, which are that mass and energy, which are human beings and animals, there is nothing ever lost. It is just changed. So our living matter and energy is changed to something else, and it gives me kind of an extended meaning to, from ashes to ashes and dust to dust, because we are changed and we are converted into nature. This may not be everyone's belief system, but for me, it comforts me at the same time as opening conversation about death, which is one of the main reasons people get memorial tattoos, is to open dialogue, open conversation, and not so much talk about, the dead person, but talk about the living person and keeping their memory alive. So, for example, I have become introduced to many people who are deceased, but I met them through their tattoos embodied on their loved ones who wish to keep, their memories alive. So I may not have met these people in life, but I have met them through their loved ones, and their stories continue.
That's true. I will often ask people who have a tattoo to explain the tattoo, because it often is a symbol of something about the person, whoever the person is that they are memorializing. And so I'll ask them, tell me more about this tattoo. And so it's always unique, and that's always interesting to me. And then I learn more about the person who has died because of the tattoo, and it really opens up more dialogue. It also allows the other person to speak about their person who died and allow them to talk about them. And isn't that really part of the way people move through their grief, is being able to talk about it? And so I think it's really good.
That is a key reason. And as you know from my earlier experience of those babies dying, as you know from what I've said about elephants, people think that we will be uncomfortable or sad talking about a person who has died, when you will notice when you're talking to people who have memorial tattoos that there are far more smiles than tears. They want to talk about, the living person who is now. They say all the time, this person is with me, and they tend to actually touch the part on their body the tattoo is on. So that is very important. It definitely helps through grief and bereavement. They also represent change. People who have experienced a loss of a close loved one will often mark time before the death and after the death. We're doing this with COVID now. And they will also note how the experience of this person's life and death have changed them in profound ways. And one woman told me, for example, this tattoo represents the change I've experienced at the death of my son, because people think I look the same, and maybe I do look the same, but I am changed. My insides were scrambled and reassembled. And this tattoo reminds me and reminds them that just because I look okay and the same, I'm not.
Right.
It's interesting. It's sort of an embodiment of the grief. I also like the thought that it's a sort of an open invitation. If you put a tattoo where it would be perfectly visible, say your hands or your forearms, that sort of thing. To me, when I've worked with hospice patients, to me, it says this was important to me. I want it visible to other people, easily visible to myself. It's not like putting it on your back, where someone else couldn't see it on a regular basis. But to me, it says, ask me about this. This is important to me. It's tangible to me every single day. I'm able to put my hand on that mark on my skin that I carry with me. So I think there is a great deal of symbolism. It's an outward mark of an inward change.
Yep, absolutely. And I, for example, and I know other people, some memorial tattoos you can tell quite quickly because they might have a birth date and a death date, and image of the person with rest in peace, and you know what that is. But by far, more memorial tattoos are symbolic of the person's life. So you might not know they're particularly memorial tattoos. Losing a person that you love is uncontrollable, and the tattooing helps restore some control to their lives. So they determine what, where, and they also determine when they feel like talking about it to others and when they don't. So it does return some modicum of control over this very uncontrollable situation.
We're excited to share a great educational opportunity with you. The California Hospice and Palliative Care Association is holding its annual conference coming up in June of 2022. It's going to be on the beautiful campus of Chapman University in Orange, California. The conference starts with an LNEC communication curriculum on Monday and Tuesday, June 6th and 7th, followed by the annual conference and exposition Wednesday through Friday, June 8th through the 10th. The theme for this year's conference is Back to the Basics at the Bedside. You'll hear information on the basic principles of the pillars of quality hospice care taught by experts in the end-of-life industry. This is a great opportunity to get those continuing education units and to reset your focus on what's really important in patient care. Early registration is open until April 1st, so visit the CHAPCA website at calhospice.org to register and tell them you heard about it on the Heart of Hospice podcast. Just out of curiosity, Deborah, how old were you when you got your first tattoo?
I was about 55, and my parents were in their 80s, and I waited at least 6 months to tell them, and because I thought they would not be approved. And my mother said, "Oh, that's nice, dear."
That's hilarious. I'm glad I'm not the only one who would be worried about my mother's approval of whether I got a tattoo. No, I'm just curious because obviously grief knows no age, right?
Oh,
right. We all people experience loss at very young age and then up into late life. And do you feel like in your experience that you've seen more tattoos on younger people? Or would you say it's spread out through the ages?
it is actually spread out through the ages. But what my research shows is that a larger number of people get tattoos that are actually commemorative, the broader category, who are in their maybe 30s, 40s, 50s, and up. And that is because they've had more life experiences and they have something important to say. That said, when I was waiting in the waiting room to get my first two, my butterfly tattoos, I met a young fella who was 16 and still under the age where he needed his parents' approval to get the tattoo. He was there with his mom, and he said he was getting a tattoo in memory of his grandmother. And this was a tattoo his mom found she could approve of. So I have a lot of interviews actually with young people. I think that is the most meaningful kind of tattoo for young people because a lot of them haven't had the opportunity to have a lot of other profound life experiences. So one thing is, loss of a grandparent, a parent. So that is something I see on young people who have not yet perhaps, been a tattoo enthusiast yet. But that is often a first introduction to them to getting a tattoo is because now they have something really meaningful that they want to put on their body that'll be there forever.
Yeah, that's really good.
Interesting.
It is interesting. So tell us more about the Tattoo Project and what gave you the idea to start the Tattoo Project?
Well, I did my first set of interviews were a set of 35 interviews with people with all types of losses. And it's very emotionally laden labor. It's worthwhile, and I love doing it, but I would have to take a break of about, at least a couple days, even to return to my notes, because, they're such profound and emotional stories. So then I thought, well, my next phase, I'll move to focus group interviews. So there'll be other people there and there'll be other people to support them. So I did several sets of focus groups by types of loss. So one would be lost by suicide. One would be loss of siblings, which is really, really an under-researched area. Because siblings often other people look at their parents as having the greater loss, and the siblings are often really unacknowledged. So these siblings I had together, for example, they were so appreciative. That's the first time they may have met other people who have lost siblings. So I did grandparent loss, parent loss, infant loss, that type of thing. And so that was a little less emotional labor, although it still was, but it's the kind of work I love to do. If I don't invest myself in it, I might as well not do it. Right. So then I started thinking, gosh, there should be some kind of repository where researchers of all types could go to investigate tattoos and stories behind those tattoos. Well, there are a slew of things on the internet that show images of all kinds of tattoos. But as a researcher who does visual research and analysis of, the content, wanting to hear people's stories, the stories there weren't stories aligned to them. So I started working on that, and that grew into several different research projects by myself and with other groups, exploring memorial tattoos and tattoos for healing. I'm also working on an article right now about, tattoos after sexual assault. So, so many tattoos out there, so many stories, yet there's very little, not only scholarly work on it to date, but the kind of scholarly work that is available and accessible not just to scholars, but to all people who are interested. So that's how the Tattoo Project started. And actually, a friend and I were presenting at an international conference on social media I think it was about 2011. And lo and behold, there was someone there from Canadian Scholars Press who approached me after to come up with a book about, the Tattoo Project. So it was very nice because usually authors reach out to publishers, but,
Right.
They reached out to me for that. So that's how the Tattoo Project began, and it is continuing in various ways and means.
We're still living in the pandemic world. It's interesting. We sort of divide, pre-pandemic and post-pandemic. I think we're in mid-pandemic still.
I'm not sure post has happened yet.
Yeah, I would love to see that. So we've had monumental things happen globally, and then here in the United States, affecting humanity in so many different ways. Major effects of things, and even natural disasters, climate change, you name it, not just the political and the health issues related to the COVID pandemic. Do you think the pandemic has affected memorial tattoos? Like people are getting more commemorative, more memorial tattoos. How do you think the pandemic's affected it?
Absolutely, both memorial and commemorative. So the pandemic, as you mentioned, has had profound consequences for well-being, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and people are getting pandemic tattoos to note their experiences, fears, victories, hopes. Some of them may seem frivolous. For example, we saw early ones with rolls of toilet paper and, 2020 written on them. But others are, none of them are to be taken lightly. Others are in memory of, people who have died during the pandemic. And a lot of healthcare workers are getting tattoos to, again, I think it's probably also a form of, trying to gain control over the situation, in some way. So the pandemic tattoos are about the past in terms of what has changed during the pandemic. So what used to be normal, about the present, what is happening in the here and now. And they represent a kind of living history. As time goes by, we'll be able to share our stories with those who have not experienced this. And one of the ways we'll do it is through the visual images of our tattoos to upcoming generations, to our grandchildren and their children. Similarly, you may know, for example, that people tattooed during the Holocaust, that succeeding generations are now getting those tattoos that their family members had. This is often a very controversial issue, especially with the family members who were tattooed during that period. And yet, getting these tattoos, their succeeding generations don't want anybody to forget. They regard the strength and resilience of their, family members who went through this, and they want to pass on these experiences and this historical knowledge to future generations. And this, for globally, is an unprecedented situation. We saw something similar with the influenza of 1918 and on. But for those of us who are living now, this is it. This is monumental. And the tattoos will represent one piece of way to understand history through them, both on a personal, interpersonal, but also on a larger social scale, I think.
I would think that for healthcare workers, for me, as a nurse, I would consider getting a tattoo to commemorate the work that's been done. I mean, we've had losses inside the healthcare community. They don't talk about that a whole lot, but we have lost nurses to the pandemic. And to me, to never forget the sacrifice that was made. I'm sure it's very similar to 9/11, the first responders, and I'm sure there were commemorative tattoos and memorial tattoos. But as a healthcare worker, I would feel the need to never forget and to create that as an outward symbol on my skin for something that's very much an internal, personalized thing. I can imagine that would have incredible meaning for someone.
Absolutely. And it's a way for healthcare workers also to support each other. I've heard of nurses, I think it was in California, they went out together and they got, similar or same tattoos. And we know now with this surge in Omicron that healthcare workers, nurses, PSWs especially, are getting so burned out. They're either dying, sick, or just getting totally burned out. And, there aren't enough people really to do their important jobs. And I would hope that one thing, certainly both in North America and other places in the world, that, the value we put socially on healthcare workers would be significantly increased, and our appreciation of them along with that. Because, I've heard lots of stories about healthcare workers not being with their families for long periods of time because they didn't want to expose their families. They come home alone, they remove their clothes, take showers, try to sleep, eat, and go back and do it all over again for hours and hours at a time. And it's a terrible consequence of the pandemic. And, I think those of us who aren't doing that every day really need to be cognizant of what, I'm going to be a little political here and say those of us, not me, but, who refuse to follow protocols are putting others' lives in danger. And that makes me angry.
Yes.
I think we would echo that sentiment.
Absolutely. So do you think that tattoos are becoming more accepted in society, maybe by the prevalence of tattoos just in general, not necessarily memorial tattoos, but just in general?
Absolutely. They're the most common form, I guess, besides, piercing in your ears, which you don't even think of as body modification. So, and, people get them to show art on their body as well. And, it used to be, I know, back in the day when you couldn't have a public service job and have any tattoos showing on your body. Now it's, I see police officers, firefighters, physicians, bankers, having tattoos. So as I say, there's a realization that they're not just, related to bikers, gangs, and so forth. And, people that I've met, young men in particular that have been in gangs, that have gotten out of the gangs and have tattoos sort of representing that. So yeah, the prevalence of body art is increasing. I mean, I don't know, maybe in 20 years, it'll be cool to have an unblemished body. No tattoos will be the cool thing. So tattoos are cool, but they're far more than cool. And that's one thing I like to, get across as I talk about the profound meanings they have to many people who have them. Now, you've heard of tattooing over old tattoos. So one reason people get those is because You might have been 18 years old and not in your best state of mind and gotten something really ugly that when you're 35, you don't want to live with anymore. Now, some people tell me that they keep those earlier tattoos because that actually represents a point in their lives that, important to them. And others think, yeah, no, I'm going to do this over and put something far more meaningful. But I have never heard of a memorial tattoo that was covered over or removed. And people, by and large, do not regret them. They may say something like, well, I wish I, put a little more color into it, or I have to go and, after 10 years, get it, get the ink a little darker. Maybe I should have moved it a bit to the left or the right, but they never regret getting them. I've never come, in contact with or talked to or read about anybody who's regretted the memorial tattoo.
Right. I think the depth of the meaning is really emphasized by that. You don't want to take away that meaning that was important to you, and you can't change that. I like that.
So you have a book, and I'm assuming that the book has lots of pictures of these memorial tattoos in it. So where can people find this book? Because honestly, I want to see this. I'm very interested.
It's on the way. I just haven't gotten it yet.
Right.
Thank you. People can contact Canadian Scholars Press, and they can order the book through there. Amazon apparently ran out of them. Also, if people want to find out more about the project, they can go to the tattooproject.info, and I've got images there. And if you're particularly interested in memorial tattoos, go to the tattooproject.info and click on the upper right corner where it says memorials. And you will see a brief visual slideshow to meaningful music that talks about the reasons people have told me they get memorial tattoos and their images and excerpts from their stories. So I invite people to visit that for more information. Anybody who wishes to contact me with questions, feel free to do so at debd@yorku.ca. Always love talking tattoos.
Awesome. And
tattoos talk. And tattoos talk, as you made note of.
I like that. We'll have links to everything in our show notes, so our listeners can go straight in and connect with you and connect with the website. You are awesome. I love your stories. I love the depth and the meaning of the symbolism of tattoos and the work that you've done. It's really impressive and amazing. I'm very moved by the work that you're doing.
Thank you. You know what? I also would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to York University, because not all universities would support this type of work. And they do. They've always supported my interest in grief and bereavement. I'm kind of the only one at York, or certainly in my program, that does this kind of work. So, I wouldn't be able to do this kind of research without my place at York. So I thank them too.
That's very good. Deborah, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to share about the tattoos and the Tattoo Project. I think our listeners will be very, very interested in getting more information about this. And we may even hear a few stories from our listeners about maybe tattoos that they already have that are memorial or commemorative tattoos. And there might even be a few people who say, I think I'm ready to do this now.
That's right. Another notch on my belt.
Exactly.
Exactly. There you go. Thanks so much, Deborah.
It's always an honor talking to you. Thank you for your interest in my work.
I think we have once again found our kindred spirit in Deborah Davidson.
I know. I really like her. She's an amazing lady.
She is. And a little bit willing to be disruptive.
That's how she describes herself. She wants to be a disruptor.
Right.
I love that. The societal norms and looking into these things. It's just amazing. And the work she's done to bring a focus, shine a light on these memorial tattoos, because we have had friends, colleagues, coworkers, family members that have memorial tattoos. It has incredible meaning. I love it that she is using the passion that she has for this project, for this topic, and creating this body of work and sharing it with people.
I hate that we didn't get her book before we had the interview.
I know.
I would have loved to have had pictures and to have seen what she's created. But for our listeners, she has put together a book of body art that shows the way people have created these memorial or commemorative tattoos. And it's an amazing piece of work that she has put together. And I'm really looking forward to seeing it and looking at the pictures. So she's actually asking for anyone who has a memorial tattoo to show that to her. Just, take a picture of it and send it to her. She's interested in your story that goes along with that tattoo.
Right.
So there may be an addendum to the book at some point. She didn't say anything about that, but she is still looking into that. So the Tattoo Project is actually there for the purpose of gathering all of these pieces of art.
Right. It's an archive.
Right. It's an archive. So
yes.
They're trying to gather these pieces of art and the stories that go with them. So if you have a memorial tattoo or a commemorative tattoo, let her know about that. And you can go to her website at thetattooproject.info, and there you can find where to send your photo and your story. This
is what it says. The Tattoo Project is a collaborative community effort to exhibit and archive your tattoos along with your stories about them, about the experiences that are inked into your body and etched in your memory.
Wow. Isn't that great?
So this is what I will say about people who work in end-of-life care. We are the memory keepers. We are the listeners to the stories. This is part of what we do. In addition to having, hopefully, personal lives and personal grief, personal losses along the way. So this really appeals to me as a story keeper, a memory keeper.
Yeah, definitely. And memorial tattoos do that very thing. They are memory keepers. And I think that was one of the terms that Deborah used in the interview, was that it's a way of remembering who this person was.
Right. Makes it tangible.
Mm-hmm.
Remember what she said about the lady who said she got the tattoo when her son died, because on the outside, you couldn't tell that she had been drastically changed, scrambled, I think was the word she used, shaken up and scrambled and put back together. But you couldn't tell that from the outside, that she had been so hugely altered by this grief experience, this loss of her son. And so she got a tattoo that on the surface of her skin was there to remind her she could even touch it. It was tangible to say, this is who I am now. This is part of who I am. This is what I have lived through. This is a legacy. This is part of my life.
Right.
It's just incredible meaning. I really like that.
I do too. So one of the conversations that we had after the interview was over, you actually got curious and asked her also, where are your tattoos?
I did.
And
because I'm nosy like that.
And she said that she has some of her tattoos on her right thigh on the front.
Right, above her knee.
Above her knee. And then she has one on her left arm, on her forearm. Not her forearm,
her
I'm sorry.
Upper arm by the shoulder.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then one on her forearm.
Yes, that kind of swirls and moves around.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Because it has to do with the wind and the elements of the earth.
So as a teacher, she will actually wear something where she can expose those tattoos
and show her students.
And show her students. She said at some point in her class, she'll wear something where she can kind of hike it up.
She said, hike it up.
Show the tattoo on her thigh. So here are these probably, 18, 19, 20-year-olds coming into her class as, learning about sociology and learning quite a bit more as well, learning about the memorial tattoos.
Exactly. And not expecting someone of her age, right? Someone of her generation to have these tattoos like this.
Yeah.
She truly is a disruptor for good and for teaching and education and sharing these legacies. That's just an amazing legacy for her to leave.
Right. And I think in a very real sense, she's changing the world and changing the way that the world looks at tattoos and people who have tattoos.
Absolutely.
So, Deborah, keep doing your work. We appreciate you.
We love it. If you're interested in seeing more work, reading about the Tattoo Project, or maybe adding your tattoo to the archive, remember you're going to go to thetattooproject.info and you can connect with the project there.
Thanks for listening to The Heart of Hospice. I'm Jerry Finter here with Helen Bauer. Because we know your hospice journey is 24/7, you can always find us at theheartofhospice.com. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening.
To connect with us, just send an email to host@theheartofhospice.com. You'll get a reply from us. And you can also find us on social media. So remember, no matter who you are or where you are in your hospice journey, you are the heart of hospice.